Okay, so you're in the middle of a great conversation with an AI. It's helping you come up with ideas, write some code, maybe even just draft a tricky email. Everything's clicking. And then, poof, it just breaks. It gets weird. It starts repeating itself. Or it just confidently makes stuff up. We've all been there, right? And you think, it's just a glitch. But what if it's something way, way deeper than that?
It's honestly one of the weirdest things about AI right now. How could a tool that feels so incredibly smart one second just turn into complete nonsense the next? It's a huge puzzle, and the answer gets to the very core of what this technology is, and maybe what it can never be.
I mean, you've definitely seen this stuff. The AI just totally forgets a key detail you gave it like 2 minutes ago. Or it gets stuck in a loop, saying the same thing over and over, like a broken record. Oh, and my personal favorite is when it hallucinates. It just invents a fact or source with complete and utter confidence. These aren't just little bugs. They're clues to a much bigger problem.
So, to really get to the bottom of this, we're going to dive into this amazing new research paper by Erickson Katz. It's called Conversational Thermodynamics. And it has a pretty wild idea. What if the reason AI conversations fall apart has less to do with programming and more to do with the basic laws of the universe?
And this quote from the paper, man, it just says it all. The argument is that these AI conversations are a lot like systems of energy. They're governed by the same rules of order and chaos, of entropy, that control everything from an ice cube melting to how the entire universe works. It's a huge shift in thinking.
So this theory gives us a whole new language for talking about what's going on when an AI goes haywire. Forget about glitches and bugs. We're going to start talking about things like semantic entropy, dissipation, and the final destination for any conversation that's left to its own devices, total collapse.
Okay, so the big idea here is something called semantic entropy. Just think of it as conversational chaos. When you start a chat, everything's pretty clear, right? The meaning is tight. But with every single reply, a little bit more uncertainty, a little bit more disorder just creeps in. And as that chaos, that entropy builds up, the actual meaning of the conversation just starts to unravel.
And this is a perfect way to picture it. Over on the left, you've got a low entropy conversation. That's what we want. It's focused, it makes sense, it's stable. But the more the AI talks, the more it naturally drifts over to the right, to a high entropy state. And that's where things get chaotic, contradictory, and the point of the conversation is just gone.
In fact, the research shows that pretty much every AI chat follows the same predictable path. It starts out nice and stable. Then, as those little errors and uncertainties start to pile up, it enters this dissipative state, where meaning starts to leak out. And then, finally, if you don't do anything to stop it, it hits a tipping point and just collapses into gibberish.
Now, this is where things get really wild. Because this whole thermodynamics idea, it has some pretty shocking things to say about the big quest to build artificial general intelligence, or AGI. I mean, if every AI conversation is basically doomed to fall apart, what does that mean for our dream of building a truly independent thinking machine?
It's the obvious question, isn't it? These things are so powerful. Why can't they just realize, hey, I'm starting to go off the rails here and just course correct? Well, according to this theory, the answer is simple. They can't. They're fundamentally unable to.
And here's the kicker. Self-repair isn't just a feature they're missing. The paper argues it's basically forbidden by thermodynamics for these kinds of AIs, and it's because they're missing 3 critical things. First, a semantic ground state. That's like an absolute anchor for what's true. Second, a way to create order out of chaos, what a physicist would call negative entropy. And third, a way to check its own work that's more trustworthy than itself, which is a paradox, right?
This right here is the absolute heart of the matter. See, our understanding of the world is anchored. It's grounded in our memories, our senses, our real-life experiences. That's our ground state. An LLM, it has none of that. Its understanding is a floating state, just this incredibly complicated web of statistics and probabilities with zero connection to actual reality. And without that anchor, when it gets lost, it has no map to find its way back.
And this line from the paper is such a mind-bender. It's suggesting that the intelligence we see in an AI isn't something it actually has. It's a temporary low-chaos state that the AI is just borrowing from its training data and, you won't believe this, from us.
So you might be thinking, okay, but what about GPT-5 or GPT-6? Surely they'll get better. And yeah, they will. This chart shows a hypothetical GPT-5 being way better than GPT-4o at having a meaningful conversation. But look where that dotted line is. Immunity to collapse is not even on the same planet. Newer models are better at fighting off the chaos, for sure, but they are still slaves to it.
And this really drives home the final verdict from the paper. We can't just keep building bigger and bigger models and hope we eventually trip over AGI. The problem isn't about scale, it's about physics. Unless we invent a totally new kind of system that can somehow defeat this semantic entropy, true AGI is probably going to stay out of reach.
So, if the AI can't fix itself, and it's always sliding towards total chaos, how does it even work at all? What's stopping every single chat from just imploding instantly? Well, the answer is you. And I mean that literally. Check out this number from the study. In 100% of the times the AI conversation completely collapsed, it was totally helpless. It could not recover on its own. Every single time, a person had to jump in, clarify, correct, and basically reset the conversation.
So just think about what that really means. We're not just users of these AIs. We are a fundamental part of how they operate. Our questions, our corrections, our guidance, that's the only outside energy that fights back against that natural slide into chaos. We are the anchor. We provide the order that keeps the whole thing from just flying apart.
And that just leaves us with this final fascinating and maybe kind of spooky thought. The paper's conclusion is that these models don't have intelligence, they just channel it for a moment, and only when we create the perfect conditions. So if an AI's brilliance is really just a reflection of our own ability to steer it, a temporary state it borrows from our own mind, then what does that say about what intelligence even is? It kind of reframes our whole relationship with this technology, doesn't it?